Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Parallel Worlds Translating Manga. My name is Nobu Nakamura, Program Officer at the Japan Foundation Toronto. Tonight's event is presented by the Japan Foundation Toronto, and we are so extremely pleased to see so many of you joining us tonight. So tonight's guests, we feature David Evelyn, Jenny McKeon, and Jocelyn Allen as the moderator. Japan Foundation is a nonprofit cultural organization, and we promote deeper understanding of Japanese culture through arts and culture, language, and intellectual exchange programming. So tonight's live stream event is going to be recorded for those of us who couldn't make it tonight. So it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. And during the talk, I encourage you to ask questions and share your comments in the chat on the side, this side. And yeah, we always love to hear your feedback. And so please fill out a short questionnaire at the end of the live stream. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to the Executive Director of the Japan Foundation Toronto, Yuko Shimizu.
Hello, good evening, and konbanwa. We are pleased you can join us for the first of the Parallel Worlds, Translators Behind the Scenes series, translating manga together with Jenny McKeon, David Evelyn, and Jocelyn Allen. This is the first of a series of discussions where we will talk to translators of manga, literary fiction, genre fiction, and children's literature to gain a deeper understanding of the challenges and thrills of bringing a variety of Japanese works to English readers. It brings me great pleasure to introduce you to the moderator of tonight's talk, Jocelyn Allen. Jocelyn is an award-winning Japanese translator and interpreter and translated hundreds of short stories, novels, and mangas, including 2 Eisner Award-winning manga, Frankenstein by Ito Junji, as well as the critically acclaimed Our Dreams at Dusk by Kamatani Yuki. Very recently, her translation of Remina by Ito Junji has been nominated for the Eisner Award. As an interpreter, she has worked with Japan's most celebrated authors and artists, including Murata Sayaka, Nagata Kabi, Nakajima Kyoko, and Asao Inyo. Her translation of the classic novel Colorful by Mori Eto is set for release in July 2021. So welcome, Jocelyn. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Shimizu-san. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the very kind introduction with all those awards. And welcome everyone to Parallel Worlds Translating Manga. This is the first in a series of ongoing discussions, as Shimizu-san said, and I'm Jocelyn Allen. I will be your host for the next hour as we talk about manga and peer behind the translation curtain. I'm extremely pleased to have with us tonight 2 excellent translators of manga. First, let me welcome David Evelyn. David specializes in all forms of Japanese English media, including anime, manga, games, and light novels. He is currently at work on the ongoing Shonen Jump series Undead Unluck, Kaiju number 8, and I Tell C. Thanks for being with us tonight, David.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it very much.
And I would also love to welcome Jenny McKeon. Jenny works on manga and light novels and translates series such as Nichijou, Blank Canvas, and Bloom Into You. She has a BA in Japanese and linguistics and is a writer and artist in her own right. I'm so glad you could join us tonight, Jenny.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, questions. The big question that everyone wants to know, first and foremost, how did you start doing this? Like, did you always want to be a Japanese manga translator, or did you kind of come at it from a sideways place? Maybe let's start with Jenny.
Okay. Yeah, I have been reading manga since I was a kid. And of course, I always kind of wanted to be a manga translator. studied Japanese in college, realized I had no idea how to become a manga translator, gave up on that, and was just sort of floating around wondering what to do. And I stumbled on the manga translation battle, which I don't know if it's currently being held. It used to be every year.
It is, I think. I feel like I saw it posted earlier. Oh, we'll have to check
I hope
on that.
so.
Yeah.
We'll fact check.
Yeah.
So this was like 2015, I think. And Nichijou was one of the series that you could, there was like a sample chapter and you translated it and then they like picked the winners. And the person who won for each series got to translate that series, which is just wild. And yeah, I still kind of can't believe it. So I entered kind of feeling like I had nothing to lose and not really having high expectations. I just kind of like went wild. I think I wrote a limerick. It's all a blur. And apparently that worked because I ended up winning first place for that. And so from there I was like, well, I guess maybe I can do this.
Oh, wow. I've read that translation. It's really good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, me too, actually.
I just reread it recently because, plug, they're putting out a anniversary edition, a box set of all 10 volumes.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, can I fix things?
The eternal question.
Yeah.
There was like not as much as I expected that I would want to fix, actually. Mostly just one joke that I was hung up on, but that's
the eternal curse.
The jokes are always going to get you. You just have to push it into the past and walk away.
Yeah.
How about you, David? How did you end up in this wacky world?
So I actually wanted to be a mangaka, and when I was about in, I want to say like the start of college, maybe like the end of high school, that's when I got into translation and like trying to submit like manuscripts to Japanese publishers so I could be a mangaka. But that ultimately kind of fell through at my last year of college, where I just kind of went to the point where I was like, well, all my manuscripts get, bolted and sent back. So, so I just decided, so I decided that maybe I should take some time off of like trying to be a manga artist and try to focus on translation because it was a lot more lucrative at the time for me, because I've been bilingual almost all my life. So I started I started learning language in middle school, and then I like kind of just grew up around with Japanese all my life almost. So I was really good at technical translation, and I did some stuff on the side, and I got my big break when I went to translate visual novels, and that kind of steamrolled into translating everything. Like I translate almost everything: visual novels, light novels, and manga. For manga, I actually it was a bit of nepotism because my friend works at Viz, and he had been trying to get me on a project way back, but I never heard anything from it, and I ended up finding out it was like JoJo. But then I ended up translating an art book, the Tokyo Ghoul art book, and that ended up landing me a job with Undead Unluck, and that was like my first real manga series that I translated.
Oh wow, really? It's really well done for your first series. Both of you have like such excellent debut works. I'm so jealous.
My first manga. I've been translating so long. Like it's just like that was my first official manga translation, right? So like that was it was like a long time in the making, basically. Like a culmination of me trying to get into manga translation, just never finding my the right in. But now I got more manga translation work than I can sneeze at, so I'm good.
Yeah, you look really busy. I mean, Shonen Jump series are. I mean, well, let's go talk about that for a second, because this is something I'm really interested in. So the Shonen Jump, you can like read it on the app. It's an amazing value for your dollars. If you want to read comics, go there. But it's really intense for the translator, right? Because it's a simulpub, which means I'm going to ask you to tell us about simulpub. But first, can you just talk about shonen as a genre, so that I think most people have an idea of it, but I'm sure some people are just like, what's shonen? So let's clue them in.
So shonen literally means young man, like it means boy. It's usually comics made for about like middle school to high school students, but usually there's some like, seep off at the end, like where adults and whatnot will read it. But I think shonen as a genre is just basically like, it embodies like young, like youthful, like almost like, sports and battles and stuff like that, like the kind of stuff that you would see in like, your famous, like, Naruto, Dragon Ball, and Slam Dunk. If you're a sports fan, Haikyuu. I'm dated myself with Slam Dunk. Oops. Yeah, like Captain Tsubasa and
go way back.
Ringu ni Kakero, like all that other stuff. No, but yeah, but shonen manga is just it's like a genre in itself, but not really. It's more like I want to say like it just is a title. It's not really a genre, because like anything can be a shonen manga, like anything can be a seinen manga. Like there are works that kind of like Chainsaw Man is like a shonen manga technically, but like that is all sorts of gory. Hokuto no Ken is a shonen manga, but like that's.
So you can have like with you just mentioned seinen there, so I want to like jump in and be like seinen, older men, and basically you both work in different genres, which is something I'm really interested in. Right. But so the kind of main breakdown is shonen, seinen, josei, and shoujo, which are like girls, boys, ladies, men's kind of differences. Although these are just like labels, they don't mean anything anymore, really, except for a certain kind of story that you can expect. And with like shonen, especially with shonen jump titles, I think, like you said, you can expect action, you can expect friendship usually. And so you're working on these series like that has a lot of stuff going on, and you're doing them on a weekly basis. Right. What is that like? Like, tell us about simulpubbing and like how that even works.
So for all of my simulpub series, they all are radically different from one another. Not even just in genre, like in the back end. Like, because Undead Unluck comes out every, technically Monday in Japan, but Sunday in America. I get the chapter like at the end of the week. The same with ITLC. But I work with two different editors, and they have radically different styles. So I have to adapt to both of them. And for Kaiju number 8, that comes out technically on Shonen Jump Plus, which is a web-only service. So that comes in whenever the mangaka finishes stuff. Like it'll be like, oh, it's Tuesday morning, 2:15 a.m. I got a chapter or 3. Okay, I'll just work on them, I guess. And then basically it culminates into me having to the weekly stuff is fine. The kaiju stuff just comes in whenever, and it's pretty normalized now. Like I don't really find it that difficult nowadays, but like when I was first starting, it was just like, okay, now I have to like put on my my thinking cap and my mind reader cap to see what, because there's a lot of like context that gets lost when you're doing a weekly series. Like you're left in the dark as much as anyone else, really. You only have like a week of lead, because we have a week of lead ahead, basically, like where we're a week ahead of the readers, basically. So we stay a week ahead. The readers are a week behind. I know what'll happen the week after they know, but that's it. Like I don't know anything else. Like I'm in the dark. I'm like, okay, I gotta make sure stuff is right. And sometimes I'll be right and it'll be wrong in the story. Like there's one instance of like well, this is kind of context, but Undead Unluck, there's no days of the week in that universe. So like when I went to translate something, it was Wednesdays Downtown, the show with Downtown with Matsumoto and Hamada. They have that in that universe, but it's not called Wednesdays Downtown. It's something else, but it uses the same acronym. So I translated that the right way, but it was wrong in the universe. So stuff like that'll happen.
Yeah, that sounds like right. And with a full volume, you have that, you can see ahead and get that context that you need to go back and do that chapter. So yeah, I can imagine that's quite a challenge.
Yeah, we get to fix stuff later on once the volume comes out, but sometimes I forget, and I have to like the last moment like rush in. But.
I love it. I want to kind of contrast that with Jenny. You only do like actual volumes, book by book, but right, as far as I know.
I have exactly one Simulpub, and it's for the So I'm a Spider, So What manga. So it's an adaptation of a light novel that I've already translated.
Oh, so you're flying in the clear there.
Yeah, so it's pretty much easy mode aside from the fact that it comes out whenever it wants.
That's the difficulty with simulpubs is you just kind of have to be there when it comes. And
right.
But I want to. What's the process? What's your work process like? Each of you, like from the start of a job until it becomes a book or whatever. Like, walk me through what you do. Go, Jenny.
Okay. I get an email that's like, please translate this book. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
And usually they'll either send files or they'll send it like a link to buy the ebook, and then you get reimbursed, at least in our case. I know some people still get physical volumes to translate, but you do. I just don't anymore, which is honestly fine. I'm running out of space. But
yeah, same.
I'm sure you don't know the problem at all. But so sit down with the book, probably flip through the previous volume to remember what exactly is going on. And then I pretty much just start, I've got the book in one window or monitor, and I've got Microsoft Word over here, and I just start translating it. Some people, I think, will like read through the whole volume first, but I tend to find that it honestly like comes sort of, the lines tend to like, this sounds so like mystical, but it's just like, it comes to me more the first time I read it. So if I read it through it and then I go back, I'm going to forget like what line initially came to me for like dialogue and stuff.
Right.
And like your first instinct isn't always the best one. Also, sometimes it is. Yeah. Or sometimes, that's what you want to work off of. So I'm usually reading it as I go and occasionally flipping forward to be like, are we like foreshadowing here? Or is this just okay?
And then so you do that and then you send the script to the editor, I assume?
Yeah, I give it a once over. Probably not as long as I could, but depending on how much time is left,
We're all busy.
Right.
Eventually, you just is a bunch of shapes on a page that don't have meaning, and you're like, someone else, please look at this.
Right.
But I've also been getting into the habit over the years of leaving notes that are like, I'm not sure if this is good, or like, this is why I did this, but you might want to do this instead.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, David? What's it look like from start to finish for a job with you?
Oh, it's chaos. No, but it's
as long as you got that under control.
Yeah, it's like a Jackie Chan like movie at the end where they have all the bloopers like of him falling off a roof and stuff. No, but it's not that bad now. Now that I've worked with a lot of editors and I know what the style is for this company or that company, right? For Viz, every editor seems to have their own style, so I just kind of adapt to it. Like if they want things formatted this way, they want spaces this way, they want notes in brackets like this, they want sound effects like this, like it just kind of happens like that. Like for me, I get the weekly chapter in a PDF, and I usually just go over it. I look because it's like 19, 22 pages, so I just go over it. And I look and I see what's up in the chapter, and then I'm like, okay, cool. And then when I get up to actually translating it, it usually goes by pretty quickly. I'm done with my draft in like maybe a few hours, unless it's like something really like out there. Like I've had one just recently where it was just like kind of like, ugh. Because I'm doing both Undead Unluck and I Tell C now, so I have to spend my time doing both, and both of them don't have the same due date because the editors are different. Like for that, I just I kind of just do it, and then when it's time to give it to the editor, I just haul it off. And then for Kaiju number 8, I just I know the letterer. The letterer is my friend Brandon Bovia,
Brandon.
Yeah, he's the manga lettering god of the industry. So me, my editor, and him all kind of like really work well together. So I just like sometimes when I'm translating stuff, I just like send stuff to him, and he's like, "Ah!" and I'm like, "Ah!" and we get all excited, and we're Patera earring fusing together. But we're like that's basically it for my Simulpub stuff. It's like it's chaos in the sense that I don't know what I'm going to get. Like it could be anything. It could, something that I translated last week could be terrible. But for Kaiju number 8, actually, I get usually 2 or 3 chapters, or 1 or 2 chapters nowadays at a time. So that extra chapter of context, it does so much for me. Like, because I can just go back and be like, oh, thank God, right? I just let me change that real quick.
Yeah, that's the one thing I really hated about working on Simulpub is you don't have that extra context, and like a lot, not all the time, but it often happens to me that I don't really get something in a story until I get to the end of it, like end of a volume. And then I'm like, oh, that's what that was about. And then when I go rewrite, then it's like, oh, now I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like a character's speaking quirk or that kind of thing.
Or
I feel,
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I want to hear what you say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm too courteous.
You're
no, but
practically
like
Canadian.
I'm part Japanese. It happens.
There you go.
Yeah. But basically, like for that kind of stuff, I feel like I kind of excel in adaptation, like adapting very quickly to things. I'm very flexible with how I work. So when I am posed with something like that, I can be like, okay, I want this character to sound like this. I want this character to sound like that. Bing, bang, boom. Andy and Undead Luck, he sounds like Deadpool. Whatever. That's how he's going to sound the rest of the series.
He does.
He kind of does.
He kind of does.
He kind of does. Like, I mean, his speaking style in Japanese is pretty like Yankee, like very like rough hooligan kind of. So I was like, okay, that's cool. He's always making quips. Let's just make him. I mean, he's going to sound like Deadpool regardless. And then for Kaiju number 8, Hoshina has a Kansai Ben, or Kansai accent. So I'm going to try my best not to make him sound yeehaw. Like I'm going to make him like sound like a character. That. Yeah, no, I hate. I had a whole thread about that. Like just like I don't do the yeehaw stuff unless it's like really like essay Kansai Ben, like fake Kansai Ben. That can be yeehaw because it's fake, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like yeehaw, I'm a rootin' tootin', but I don't want to make the main character of a manga sound like like he's a cowboy when he's not. So this is something I'm really. It's such a challenge with Japanese, like I think manga especially because you do have that the vocal tics or whatever that each character has their own specific way of speaking with dialects and things like that. And in Japanese, that's really natural. Like there are a million different dialects, but in English, dialects are so limited and limiting, and they just So. And there's a lot of things in Japanese that, are really difficult to bring into English, like that, or colloquialisms, or, like specific turns of phrase. Right.
Like, how do you both handle those things when you come up against, like a dialect or a idiomatic phrasing, or what are some ideas or words that you find particularly challenging to translate, and how do you handle them? Here's a whole bunch of questions.
Well, I've been yippity yapping. Why don't you try that one, Jenny?
When it comes to dialects like Kansai Ben, I feel like I definitely, when I was starting out, tended to lean more on like, okay, well, this is Kansai Ben, and I don't know what to do, so I guess you're gonna sound like vaguely Southern. And I think it was partly through reading threads from translators like both of you that like sort of got me thinking about trying to use like the actual way they phrase things in English and like their particular vocabularies, which I am now losing mine, and things like that to make them sound just slightly different as opposed to just throw an apostrophe at the end of the sentence and call it a day. I really like idioms, and I keep like a like lists of my favorite Japanese idioms. I like the son of a frog is a frog.
Yeah.
But that's got a perfectly good English translation, so that's neither here nor there. Right. But when it's not something with a direct equivalent, I have a tendency to just either 50 tabs of Google or like turn to my partner or the nearest English speaker and be like, hey, does this sound like words? Like, would you say this like this or like this? And they're like, neither. Those are not words. And I'm like, right, try again. But sometimes you just like, when you're in the translation minds for so long, you start to lose track of what English is supposed to sound like. And then you need to talk to someone who is not constantly translating or consuming translated media. Also, you need to consume media that's not translated.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I don't know if that answered any of the questions.
I think it answered like at least half of them.
Yeah. I mean, for me, really, like, I kind of like grew up around, well, I didn't grow up around it, but like I've been consuming all sorts of media ever since I was a kid. So I've gotten a decent dose of English and Japanese media, and a whole bunch of like, I've just picked up a whole bunch of like dialects from English and Japanese, and I've kind of like rooted them in my brain to where like, oh, I can kind of see similarities in this and that. Like Tennessee kind of sounds like this. Like maybe Tosa sounds like someone from Atlanta or something like that. I don't know. Like I've drawn like parallels in my mind to parallels. I've drawn
nice.
Yeah.
Subliminal advertising.
Advertising to the thing that you're watching. But like
a series.
That's true. That's true. But I think it all culminated when I started, like, you know, I was like, oh man, I want to translate stuff. So I translated, like, I was translating like documents, and that's boring. So I was like, let me see if I can just like test with like anime and stuff like that. And anime like would throw me like curveballs. Like there was one character in one anime that talked in Satsuma Ben, which is which was like, it was Daisuke Gori, the late Gori Daisuke, rest his soul. He was speaking in Satsuma Ben, and I was like, what the heck is this? So I had to like look up like Satsuma Ben and stuff like that, and that kind of steamrolled. Like I learned Hakata Ben and Tosa Ben, and when I first started learning Japanese, I learned from Kobe Ben, from a person who taught me. So like those dialects are kind of like, because in English you don't speak the same as someone else, right? Like I don't speak like most people from Jersey, and people from Jersey don't speak like me. So it's important to keep that in mind. Like you want to make sure that these characters at least sound different on the page, because the different kinds of character voices tend to meld together if you just make them all homogenous, you know? So like in something like, I don't know, like in Kaiju number 8 or Undead Luck, you can tell when Andy is speaking very clearly, right? Like there's no like in between, like, oh, that could be, or that. Even like people with kind of flat accents and like, you know, who speak in normal Japanese, like Fuko, you can tell Fuko's saying something. You can tell when Shen is saying something. You can tell when this character's saying something. So that's the kind of thing that you have to keep in mind, in my opinion, is it's more about coherency to the reader than it is about making sure that you just have to make sure that everything on the page like melds together and that you can follow it even without like speech bubbles.
I think that's like a really, really good point. And I think that's something that gets lost in a lot of that like literal translation stuff, where it's like, well, he has a dialect, so he must speak with a dialect in English. And it's
right.
Like, well, this person just has a different way of speaking, and how can you convey that tone and give them their own unique way of speaking? Like you said, everyone speaks differently, so all your characters should sound different, just in the way they use words, not just because they say dabe after everything, you know, like.
Right, exactly.
Jenny, before you mentioned, I wanted to just jump back to this before I forget. You mentioned you keep like a list of idioms. Do you keep any other like glossaries or Bibles and things for the series that you work on?
Only if they make me, because I'm not smart.
Okay, fair enough.
If anyone is looking for advice, please keep glossaries for all of your series. But it's too late for me. When I start new things now, then I start keeping better track of.
Right.
How about
like
you,
catchphrases
David?
and
Oh.
things like that. But
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Sorry,
cut you
go
off,
ahead.
Jenny.
Okay. Yeah, they for Simulpubs they have you make a style guide / glossary, and I'm pretty thorough about mine. Like I didn't make mine for Undead Unluck until like I was like at chapter 20 something because my editor forgot. So then I made Undead Unluck and Kaiju number 8's glossaries at the same time, and they kind of look similar. Basically, it just has like names, world like universal stuff like terms, and for Undead Unluck, it's kind of crazy. You have to keep rules in mind when Undead Unluck because nothing is actually the same as our world in that manga. So like I'm like, okay, you can't mention God, like you can't say oh God because God is an enemy in that manga. And only when they say God. If they say God in the manga, like you could say God, but like you can't really do that with Undead Unluck because he's an enemy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sorry, that just reminds me of one. I have a thing like that I always think about, and I think I might have read a tweet that got it stuck in my head. But like saying "what on earth" when it's like an isekai or something, they're not on Earth,
right? Unless it's Earth.
But it could be Earth, like the ground,
or like they're on an Earth, like
that's true too.
Alternate Earth, you know what I mean?
But yeah, you definitely start to think about the implications of like
language,
words and phrases that you wouldn't normally examine.
Right, like just say it in plain English. You can't say that in Japanese. Or what?
We get like really twisted up in there. Like,
I mean, like just. But yeah, I keep seeing glossaries and stuff like that. But usually, if they tell me to do it, and I'll just do it. It's no problem.
That's fair.
I'm very what is the word? I'm very particular. Like with my scripts, she was Jenny was talking about notes, right? I leave paragraph-long notes in my scripts. I leave so many notes that like any editor that sees it is like, man, this guy I can't stand him. Like I want them to hate me at the end of it because I leave so many notes that are just like, hey, this is this, blah, 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 that and the third. But they're very thorough, and I've actually been thanked for my thoroughness in my notes. So I'm assuming I'm doing the good job.
Yeah, I think at first when I was starting out, and I've seen some other beginner translators assume that like leaving notes means you're like not confident enough in your work, but it's definitely better to try to communicate with the editor, because otherwise if you just like give it your best shot and don't even mention like the thought process, then they might just be like, well, that seems wrong, and just change it, and then you'll notice that when you get the book like 6 months later and you're like, oh, probably should have explained what I was going for there.
This is something
not speaking from experience.
No, that's never happened.
No,
of course not. I think this is something people don't realize is that very rarely does a manga translator have a final say over the text. Like once, like we were talking about the process of a job before, like you translate the book and then you send it to your editor, and that's kind of the end of it.
Kind of, yeah.
I do have one client that I started working with that we actually communicate with the editor, and the editor is a friend. And the book is the Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting, and you should definitely read it.
Oh yeah,
it looks good.
It definitely drives home how weird it is to not communicate much with the editor. And I think that like that's been changing a bit. Like I at least communicate in email a bit more often now with a lot of editors, and there's like back and forth, like we're not sure what to do about this line,
right?
But yeah, because people think that you're like, or at least I think some people assume that translators are talking directly to the author and then just being like, hey, what gender is this character? No, we just have to guess.
And I think people think that we are in direct contact with the author through the whole process, and that we have final say over everything that is published. And neither of those things are true. Oh, and the other myth I think that's very pernicious is we license the books.
Oh yeah.
So tell me, how much control you have over what gets published in English, please.
So I'm going to tell you a little anecdote from
bring it.
ITEL-C. ITEL-C, there is, in the first chapter, it's like 54 pages. The first chapter has a saying, it's doku o motte doku o seisuru, which is fight poison with poison. Basically, it's an idiom like meet evil with evil, fight fire with fire. So, in the first chapter, I translated that as fighting fire with fire, but I left a note saying this is an idiom that means fighting poison with poison or meeting evil with evil. You can do what you want with it. So, my editor emailed me and said, okay, we're going to change that to, fighting fighter. We're going to keep it as fire. I'm like, okay, cool. And then maybe 2 days before it goes live, she's like, okay, we actually changed it to, fighting poison with poison. I'm like, okay. And then a day before it goes live, she's like, actually, we're going to change it back because we found something. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Like, I don't know. Okay, but then it ended up being beneficial that it was poison with poison because in I think the third chapter, they were talking directly about poison. And they were like, when you have the poison on your hands, and I'm like, you can't just have like
when you've got the fire.
His hands are on fire. It's like, you can't really do that. Okay. And also in that same chapter, there was speaking of idioms, there was like for Lisa, the main character, she finds criminals and falls in love with them, and she calls them her Hakuba no Hannin. So that's her white knight.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so like I translated it as her blight and shining armor, or blight and shining armor is what it ended up being, but I ended up translating it as her blight and white armor. That ended up making it live, but they changed it afterwards, like after it went live, because you can do that with simulpubs to make it more cohesive with the actual saying. So it was blight and shining armor.
I thought that was great, by the way. I was like,
thank you.
that's really good.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta know what this was in Japanese.
I'm glad we're talking about it.
ITEL-C has been like the litmus test for my translation skills, because every week is a new, fresh, exciting deal, where I have to like sit there and with a bottle of Jack and cry a lot until something pops out of my head. I'm like, oh, genius. And then I slap it down. I give it to my editor. She says it sucks. And then I'm just like, okay, well, I'm drunk anyway, so I don't care.
Yeah, but dulls the pain.
Yeah, it dulls the pain anyway. But no, it has been a very big litmus test for that series. And for stuff like that, we have no final say over it. We basically, if it was up to me, you guys would be reading Chojin Luck and Kinnikuman. Like, you would be reading all these 80s and 70s series. Like you would be reading all sorts of weird crap, but you don't, because I don't have any say over it. The only time I actually have direct contact with any kind of creators is when I'm working in the game sector, because I'm usually working with like the people that make those games directly. So, or I have like a more closer line of contact, so it's not as bad. But with manga, nope.
I've like made suggestions before, and occasionally they'll act on them, and occasionally they'll ask me to translate it, unless they don't. But sometimes if they are announcing something, then I'll be like, hey. And again, sometimes it's already, especially more so these days, I feel like it's usually already been assigned by the time it's announced.
Yeah, most of the time.
But yeah, we definitely don't get to be like, here's the books I want to translate this year. And they're like, okay.
Can you imagine
it doesn't work that easily for them either.
That'd
for like
great.
the publishers and everyone else involved. But yeah.
It would be
right.
It would be devastating financially for them, but it would be great for us. Because we just basically self-indulge in everything we like.
I mean, I feel like the most we can do is be extremely vocal, like on Twitter.
Why do you think I have a blog?
I think all of us have done, Yeah,
I
so
whine
that
all the
when
time.
someone does license something, they're like, hey, you know who never shuts up about this?
You know, that happened to me with Fist of the North Star. I had my monkey's paw curled up, but I didn't translate it. I was like, I wish Fist of the North Star and Cobra and City Hunter came out, and then like it curled up, and then it was just like, I'm not working on it. Cool.
Oh.
but
It
at
happens.
least
Yeah,
it's
it
coming
happens.
out. you
No,
know?
no, I'm glad that it's
Yeah,
coming out.
yeah.
Like I don't care if I'm working on it.
Yeah, I
want it
totally
to come
feel
out.
that. Like some books, like Kageki Shoujo, when
Mm.
that was picked up, I was so excited because I think it's one of the best shoujo manga comics running right now. Like it's so
Mhm.
good,
Mhm.
and I was like, at first I was like, I've been singing his praises, and then I was like,
Mhm.
but it's coming out in English. This is so great.
Right,
yeah,
right.
and then 9 times out of 10, you're like, oh, and I know that person, and they're gonna do an amazing
Oh
job.
yeah,
so.
and the translator on it is doing an amazing job, and I'm so glad. Like
Mhm.
it's just I
Yeah.
forget their name, but
Katarina, I think.
is
Yeah.
it? Oh yeah, maybe yeah.
Yeah.
Katarina.
Last name starts with an L.
Yeah.
I can't remember her last name. I don't want to butcher it. I
Sorry,
already did.
Katarina. I think you're listening. We're sorry for butchering your
My
name.
bad.
Yeah, I think that's something people don't realize is that we control so little of this process. And yeah, I guess it's just are there other kind of myths or ideas around manga translation that you would want to challenge readers? What would you want readers to know about manga translation?
Mhm.
I mean, I would say both in follow up to like we control so little of this, and in response to what people might think. Like, even though I control so little of it, I feel extremely lucky just to be involved in the process at all because I really love manga, and I think that's probably obvious to most people. But I know some people possibly think that like there might be manga translators who are in it for the money, which is a weird sentence to be saying to anyone present who has ever translated manga. But we're translators because we're passionate about the material, not because we're trying to ruin it for a select amount of fans. Not that, I mean, I'm sure everyone who is here has been making such lovely comments, and I wish I could answer all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erica, for the name save. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Erica Friedman in the
Yes.
comments saving
I
us.
had
David,
some
how
of
about
those
you?
letters.
Like, what is a myth about manga translators, or some kind of what would you want manga readers to know about manga translators?
That it doesn't just magic on the page. That there's a whole bunch of working parts to make it work. Not just manga translators. There's letterers. There's the editors. There's proofreaders. There's everyone in editorial. There are people on the back end trying to put it up on if it goes online or if it's in printing. There are graphic designers. There are all sorts of people trying to make manga come out in English, and every single one of them is just as important as the rest. And there is no one person that makes this whole thing happen. Like, I feel like I'm blessed. Like, I feel because I got in like basically during nepotism, like for nepotism, like I just weaseled my way in, right? Like, and it's like, hey, what's up, amigos? Like, and everyone's like, okay, who are you, right? But like, I am internally blessed, and I always say that. And I love the series that I work on, and I always put 120% into it. But yeah, I'm not the only person. There are letterers. There are people that don't go online because the internet isn't the only place in the world. People prefer not to be here. And my letterer friend Dana Lux, I've never seen her in my life, but she does amazing work.
Yes, letterers and editors and everyone else in the process.
Yeah.
Yes,
all
it's definitely a
miserable
team
careers.
effort, and we should high five everyone
Mhm.
involved.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think that is a good place. And Jenny, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I just had one more, and
No,
I know
go.
I saw it in the comments earlier. But as far as becoming a translator myths, you don't need to live in Japan. I've never lived in Japan.
Yeah, me either.
I'm sure it's extremely helpful to live in Japan.
Oh yeah,
But
probably.
I couldn't afford to study abroad during college. I didn't go to Japan for the first time until after I became a manga translator. Not that I'm recommending that.
Mhm.
I'm just like, I think it's important that people know that you don't have to be able to just like randomly live in Japan for a year or two. It's
Right.
great if you can, and you'll gain amazing and valuable insights.
Mhm.
But there are other ways to learn.
Yeah, there are like a million paths to manga translation. Like, as many manga translators as there are different ways to get there. So
Mhm.
I think that's a really important point to bring up, and I know that's something that a lot of people are curious about. And now I want to look at what people are curious about. We have so many questions.
I see.
There's a lot of questions from people.
A lot of questions.
Let's do. We answered translators working directly with authors. No. How many pages do you translate in a typical work day? Let's. Someone wants to know about pacing. So, let's get down to the nuts and bolts here. How many on an average day, like on a series that you're already working on, so that you're somewhat familiar with it, not a new series.
Well, for David, it's probably a bit more like you have to do this many pages today, I imagine.
Well,
For Saddlebun.
yeah. It's usually for Shonen Jump manga, they start off with like 1 billion pages for like the first chapter, and they peter out until like 1921, 22. So I usually like every Friday or whenever I get the chapter, I do that much, like 19. For Kaiju number 8, when we first got the series, I had to do 154 pages in like the span of like 3 days.
That's too many. That's too many.
That's because they really wanted to like push it out. Well, we wanted to push it out because we liked it so much. So I just bullied through all of it. And we had like an insane team. So like Brandon's like a beast. So he lettered that in like a day and a half. Like, and we had all 5 chapters up. But like basically, if I'm not working on other manga, like volume stuff, it's like maybe 19, 20. It depends on if I'm working on something else for another company. But yeah.
How about you, Jenny?
Yeah, I would say usually I do a chapter or so of manga a day, anywhere from like 10 pages to 30 pages if I'm on a tight deadline. But I'm usually always working on a light novel as well, so I usually do like 4,000 to 6,000 emoji of that. That's with words counter, so I don't know if that's like accurate at all. Right. But it doesn't really work for pages are very arbitrary for light novels, so
yeah.
The light novels are usually like the bulk of my work day at this point.
Yeah, they were for mine too. I just ended mine, so I'm good.
You're free at last.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of here. Yeah.
I've done up to 7,000 or 8,000, and I didn't like that.
No, when you get up against that deadline crunch and you have to do more pages or more words than you want, it's the worst. It's just
that's usually when I'm like, so how badly do you need this this week? I try to do it before that week, Like, I think as you get more experience, you start to be able to tell, like, I am probably going to need another week on this if they can give me another week.
Yeah, that's something I think that's really important, is that ability to communicate that, which I think a lot of upcoming like younger translators want to just be like, I have to make the deadline no matter what, and then they blow through the deadline because it's just impossible. And that's where the problem is. Like, editors usually, they don't tell you the real deadline. Like, they're not they've been doing this a long time. Right. They're not telling you the drop deadline. They're telling you when they would like to have it, preferably. But they can wait a little bit
I always tell people, like, in 9 times out of 10, like, they would not want you to be busting your ass and working like 11 hours a day to meet this deadline that they just kind of picked because it's like, this would be a great day to have that.
Yeah.
A week after that would also probably be fine.
Yeah, totally. So I like this question a lot. If you could translate the manga series of your dreams, what would it be? Recent or vintage? Go.
I mean, I feel like I have. Because I got to translate Blank Canvas, which was the series of my dreams for the whole time. And I got to do New Game, which is ending soon. And I got to translate Nichijou, which was the original dream. So, like, I feel like I can't really ask for any more. But also, if I can, then...
I mean, yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I've tweeted about it periodically, but there's like a book about ADHD that I'd really like to translate. There's a really cute Yuri series called Cheerful Amnesia that I am just dying to do. It's about like 2 adult women who are in a relationship, and then one of them obviously gets amnesia, and then they have to sort of like fall back in love, but it's really cute, and I really like it. So I guess that's kind of on the top of my list at the moment. But
good list. David?
Oh, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm always whining about the series I want to translate. And it's like, I want to translate Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like the one series that I really want to translate because it was basically the thing that helped me learn Japanese to the point where I am right now. So I used to translate cards for funsies, and I used to like read the manga like while it was still being serialized in Jump. So I have a very deep attachment for that series. So I would really like to, some sort of reprint, like, just like, hey, let me jump on board. And also
the millennial edition.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, millennial edition.
God damn it.
The chai latte edition. I would love to translate Kinnikuman. That's one of my other favorite mangas. I love Kinnikuman. It's like the best. It's like the most. It's like a time capsule because it's been running for so long. Like it's like you go from like the tail end of the 70s all the way up to like 2000 right now, still running. And I love wrestling and stuff like that. So I would love that. Space Adventure Cobra. I would love to translate that. City Hunter.
Oh, City Hunter.
Yeah,
we're never going to get that.
We're never going to get that. Hajime no Ippo. I might as well just list off all the stuff we're never going to get. Hajime no Ippo, Coach Kame.
Oh, yeah. I'll throw Kaze Toki no Uta on that list because, like, it's never going to happen.
Kaze Toki no Uta.
I sure wish it would happen. It's never going to happen.
Chojin Roku. That's never going to happen. So basically everything that I want has either been done, but I want to redo it, or is
never
going to come out because there's, like, no market viability probably for it ever.
Yeah,
so
I have a friend at a publisher who I'm always because we're friends. So I'm always hassling her like, why don't you publish this? And she's like, and we both have the same taste in manga, so she's always like a fan of the book, and she's like, I can't sell that, and I'm like, but this.
Oh yeah, I have a whole other like hit list of like Yonkoma and Slice of Life that I've even mentioned. I like mentioned it to a publisher directly at a really cool like Kodansha event like years ago, and they were just like, no.
Yeah, it's
just like, it's like I like it, but
I can't sell it.
Things go into that I obviously don't understand. I'm just like, but it's fun, or like, but it's cute though, and I like
fun.
And that's why we're the translators and not owning a publishing company.
We'd be running these companies into the ground, right?
I want to ask another question from the chat here. When you're writing down the translation, are you using a program the company wants you to use or a certain template? You can't just use Word, or?
We do use Word, or at least I use Word. I think most translators use.
I use Docs, but I
use Scrivener.
Okay, I'm lying about most people, but I'm using Word. We're all using some kind of word processor.
Go ahead.
And there's always annoying. I mean, there's different templates for every publisher. If you work with, say, 3 to 4 publishers, then you have 3 to 4 different formats of scripts that you have to do. And sometimes you start blurring them together, and then you have to rewrite several pages of your script, hypothetically.
Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, like, even sometimes for the publisher, I work for the same publisher. I've worked with 3 different editors. They have 3 different script formats.
That is wild. That is wild.
I have no idea. I just do whatever they want me to do. I pick things up, I put them down. I don't care.
Yeah, I've had that experience too with like editors of the same company wanting different things, which is like, all right, fine. You say jump, I say how high, whatever.
Exactly.
Type. I do want to say that I think every publisher, at least every publisher I've ever worked with, and I think that's like all of them except for like one, they have deliverables in Word. So like whatever format whatever program you work in, you deliver in Word.
Right.
Which is, I think, a key point to when we're talking about the programs.
I guess technically my a step I skipped in my process was open the previous volume and copy and paste that format. And
I have templates now. I make for each manga series I work on. I just like boop, there we go.
It works that way too. The template is very helpful. This is an interesting question, and I think we kind of half answered it, but I'm curious. Are there translators who act as agents and pitch to editors? Do you know anything like this?
Not for manga translators. Like I know for literary translators, they kind of do that kind of thing, but
literary as in like true literary, like
I guess
I think they do that, but for manga and light novels, not really. You can say like "pretty please," but if you translated 10 pages of something and sent it to publishers, they'd be like, why did you do that?
Yeah, I've never had
I'd also be like, why did I do that?
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, why did I waste my time? I could have been doing something else. But no, I don't think that happens for manga, at least.
Yeah, I've never heard of that happening either. I was just curious about your experiences. I work in literary translation as well, and yeah, you can pitch things and get them picked up.
Right.
So it's just a totally different world of publishing. Like everything happens. Like a literary novel that I translate will take like 2 years of like working on it, and you know, with manga, you're like working on a turnaround of like a month.
Month, maybe even 2 months if they're generous.
Depending like on
Maybe
who you're
even
working
2
for
weeks.
and when their deadlines are. But usually you do it like, and it's over. Like it's like you translate it a month and you're done and you're moving on to another book. Whereas like I did this book Colorful that's coming out in July, and it's just like I've been working on it for like 2 years now. I'm like, when are we going to stop working on this book? And it's cool. It's just a different process. I think that's interesting. Speaking of novels and manga translation, what have you learned as differences between light novel and manga translation besides sound effects and prose style?
Light novels, you have infinite space forever, and your sentence can end in as long of a word as it needs to. Which is something I try to be conscious of when I'm translating manga, because I also draw or have drawn comics as a hobby, so I have a vague grasp of like, this is a little long for that little bubble. And of course, like Japanese text is you know, vertical, so the bubbles are usually shaped. This is obvious to us, but I don't know if that's not obvious to some people. But
I mean,
this is another reason why letterers are amazing, because they take the words that I try to keep short but are probably still too long, and they squeeze them in there. And with a light novel, if you've got like a weird Japanese dish or something, you can take 3 sentences and be like, they were eating shoyu. Shoyu is a sauce, and just like talk about it the whole time instead of either doing a little asterisk translator's note or just hoping for the best. That's a nice thing about that.
I think I've said this before, but like when I'm translating light novels, I'm translating like manga. Those are like 2 different mediums, because with light novels or novels in general, like with text, you have to paint a picture for your audience. You can't just rely on the manga artwork, because, you know, with manga, you can see what's happening. You just have to kind of connect the dots. With novel translation, you're the one creating the dots. Like you have to give people something to write. Like you have to paint a swath for people. And if you don't, then people are going to be confused and like, who's talking? Like, I don't know. Like, whatever. And you have to put dialogue tags everywhere, and it's a whole mess. But I do appreciate the amount of freedom that you're given with a light novel, because you can be as wordy as you want, kind of. You don't, you know, not overly wordy, but like within constraints, right? With manga, here's a bubble. You got to fit it in there, and you got to make sure that is tight. And it's like, okay, well, I had one just the other week where I had to like, the bubbles were like this tiny, and they were like, here's all this stuff in it, and like, oh no,
just a string of like 11 kanji, and you're like, great.
And like the English translate, well, it's usually like a small sentence that you have to translate with a lot of words.
Yeah, like yoroshiku, and then like,
or like, you know, suki na tabemono wa? Like, what's your favorite food? Question mark. And then your letterer looks at the script and wants to tear it up, and then the editor's like, I know, but you know, you just got to do it. So with a visual medium like that, I embrace it, because I wanted to be a mangaka. I wanted to be the person on the other end. So I love that about it. Like you can craft your own sentences around this art. But you know, you just have to get used to it. You know?
Yeah. Also, like the other side of that coin is in manga, if they're saying like Nezumi, you can see there's 2 rats. Okay.
Oh yeah.
In light novels,
Yes.
is it 1 rat? Is it 100 rats? You'll find out 3 volumes from now.
Yeah.
See also gender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it him? Is it he?
I'm glad that like people have been a little more accepting about the singular they, because not only is that important for people who use it, it's also very handy when the author just doesn't feel like telling you the gender of a character.
Yep.
And you're not sure if this is a reveal or if they forgot or if it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah. That's definitely a plus for the manga. Although I've worked on manga where it's like, oh no, what gender is this talking praying mantis?
Mm.
Oh, I thought you were just gonna say this extremely pretty person. Which,
Oh no! It's like I've
Praying
literally
mantis.
had like talking animals in a series, and
Right.
like, there's this praying mantis, and I need to give it a pronoun.
Mhm.
And I'm looking
Roll
up
the
pictures
dice.
online. Like, is it a female
Oh my
praying
God.
mantis?
Oh no.
But
Yeah.
what if the mangaka didn't even know that? Like,
Oh,
what
they
if
knew.
just-
I found
they
out
knew?
in volume 10. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Still
Oh my
bitter.
God.
Still
Nice.
bitter.
Nice.
Anyway. And on that weird bitter note,
Yeah.
it looks like we are out of time and we couldn't answer everyone's questions. I'm really sorry. There are so many questions though. Thanks so much to everyone for some really, really excellent questions that I wanted to ask, but we don't have all night here. So I'm just going to thank everyone for coming and watching us tonight and joining in this really exciting discussion. And a huge round of virtual applause for our wonderful guests, David Evelyn and Jenny McKeon. Thank you both for a really great conversation about some really weird manga stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you enduring me.
And I don't know about
Enduring.
y'all, but I don't mind if people like if you have a burning question that we didn't answer and
Yeah.
you want to tweet it at me or us or somebody. Somebody might be able to answer you, if we're not working. I will try.
Yeah, if anybody in the chat wants to ask a question,
I mean,
just
you can do that too.
hit us up on our Twitters aren't on the screen yet, but
They're
like,
going to be on the screen.
oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Get ready.
Even a
Where's Toby? Yeah,
Hey.
nobody's
Yeah.
in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go like this. Thank you, you guys. That was a fantastic discussion. I think there's a lot of excellent comments and questions that came out, and so really thank you all so much, Jocelyn. Thank you for a great moderator, and yeah, we hope everyone can also share their feedback in our questionnaire. We also have this. Let's see. And if you want to get in touch with everyone, there's. Oh,
There we
it's
go.
covering. Oh.
No, it's
okay.
okay. I'll just lean up
Insert
here.
like this. Okay.
Just be tall, Jenny. Just be
Yeah.
tall.
Oh, that is the one thing I can't do.
But in our YouTube description part, there's a link to our feedback. So yeah, we'd always love to hear how you'd like to talk, so we can bring events like this back to Japan Foundation. So yeah, thank you all very much, and yeah, have a great evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thanks everyone who was here.
Yeah. Thanks everyone
Yeah.
for coming.
Thanks for fill out the questionnaire, guys.
Yeah,
Really.
and thanks Japan Foundation for hosting us tonight. This
Yeah.
was really a great opportunity.
We appreciate it so much, man.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.